Hey everybody, Pete Fletzer here once again, doing another one of those videos where I watch something that Star Wars Theory is posting and I respond to it. And why do I respond? Why do I bother? Look, the guy has 3.3 million followers. He is a big voice in the Star Wars fandom. And I happen to believe that it's a very negative voice. And it's a voice that continues to drive division in the Star Wars fandom. So I want to give a counterpoint to this particular video. Now, this video is called How Disney Destroyed Star Wars. Send this to a Disney Star Wars fan. So we're going to go through this step by step. It's a 13-minute video. Again, like the other videos, I'm not going to go through every minute of this video. I'm going to address some of the key points he makes here and try to give my opinion. Fulfill your destiny. Of course, we start with this Star Wars Theory Sabers ad.
Theory Sabers.
That's really what this is all about at the end of the day.
George Lucas understood that Star Wars was more than a space adventure. It was about spiritual growth and the battle between light and darkness within each and every one of us. Yoda's teachings in The Empire Strikes Back, or Qui-Gon Jinn's emphasis on the living Force in The Phantom Menace, show that the Force was always meant to be mysterious, transcendent.
The Force was always meant to be mysterious and transcendent, like midichlorians, which was a biological example of what, or a biological reason as to how the Force worked. But
Disney's approach feels shallow. Rey's
feels shallow to him.
Journey in the sequels is more about discovering powers than understanding the Force's philosophy.
You could argue that understanding the Force's philosophy was illustrated in this very scene he's about to show, but
Rey Skywalker.
There's no training.
I am so tired of the bros being pissed off about Rey Skywalker. It's almost as if they don't understand that that other theme within Star Wars is about family, found family, and the people you connect with along the way. But
no meditation, no sense of connection.
No meditation. Did he watch The Rise of Skywalker? Oh, yes, I know he did, because he said he loved that movie.
It's almost as if Disney sees the Force as a tool to create cool moments rather than a guiding principle.
A guy who creates Vader lightsaber violence porn and creates his own movies using the Force, using Star Wars for cool moments. That's a funny one.
Disney, at the end of the day, is a business. And yes, this video is...
That's correct. Very good. And you would know that because you start this video by selling your Theory Sabers.
To expose more of their shortcomings when it comes to being creative and understanding what Star Wars is and George Lucas's legacy.
I'm really tired of the gatekeeping, and it starts here, and the gatekeeping goes on and on and on throughout this video. But Star Wars Theory believes for some reason that he is the only one that understands what Star Wars is all about. And it's not only irresponsible and unintelligent, it's frustrating and annoying.
Because at the end of the day, we just want better Star Wars. We want Star Wars to be what it was when we were kids.
That's probably the most important thing he's ever said. We want Star Wars to be the way it was when we were kids. Dude, you're now in your, I'm guessing, 30s. You're not a kid anymore. Not only has Star Wars evolved, but the world around you has evolved, and Star Wars will change. Good sagas, good stories evolve with the world around them. You have not. You are still stuck in the prequels and the original trilogy, which are great movies, and that's awesome. But you need to understand that Star Wars has evolved, and if it's to survive, it needs to change. It needs to grow. And I don't think, and I've said this before, I don't agree that everything that's come from the Disney era of Star Wars is great. I think there's been some problems, but I also feel like there's a lot of problems with the sequels, the prequels, and the sequels. But I feel like there's a lot of problems with the prequels that now get glossed over because of this mindset that Disney is doing wrong and George Lucas could do no wrong.
But Disney's handling of these legacy characters, it feels more like a dismantling than a tribute. Luke Skywalker, one of cinema's greatest heroes, and one of mine, was reduced to a broken man with no hope.
Just curious if you saw The Empire Strikes Back and saw Yoda, who failed miserably in the Clone Wars, didn't see the Sith coming, and was reduced to a broken Yoda, whatever species he is, and hid out on a muddy, disgusting, bog-like planet very similar to what Mr. Skywalker did here.
Han Solo went from a dedicated leader to a failed father who abandoned his family.
Again, there's probably backstory there, and nobody's perfect. If you lived in a world where nobody makes mistakes and nobody has evolved and changed for the worse, which does happen and makes for more interesting characters, incidentally, then you've lived a charmed life.
And Leia, once a fearless leader, is almost a side note.
This is your most obvious miss, because there has documented interviews where they have said that the stories were going to be focused on individual legacy characters and bringing them back together. And unfortunately, Carrie Fisher passed away, and it was impossible to make her a bigger part of the story. But what they did with her was, it was admirable, but not perfect.
Luke is willing to sacrifice himself for his father's redemption. But Disney's Luke in The Last Jedi is a man who nearly kills his nephew in fear.
This, again, I'm not going to relitigate this scene from The Last Jedi, but it is obviously, it's a character growth moment. I mean, this is the kind of thing that happens. And we got 3 different versions of the story. So please watch the movie again and understand that he didn't actually kill his nephew, by the way. He definitely feared what he saw, and he wasn't sure how to manage those feelings and that situation. He said that he saw Kylo Ren bring an end to everything he loves. How would you respond?
So turning him into a disillusioned hermit felt less like character development and more like Disney trying to subvert expectations for shock value.
It shocked you. We're still talking about it. It fucking worked.
Instead of showing these characters as battle-worn but resilient, Disney chose to make them shells of their former selves.
They're also trying to build a franchise that will move forward, so introducing new characters was absolutely critical. If you want the next generation to love Star Wars, you need to give them their own characters, and you need to graciously walk away from the existing characters. And as painful as it is, and as difficult as it might be for you to understand, this was the way they had to go. If Star Wars is to survive, you have to walk away from Luke, Leia, and Han. You can't continue to do Remember Berries, because that will not allow the franchise to survive and grow. There are so many young children that love Rey. There are so many young children that love the Clone Wars and the newer content, the Bad Batch, Ahsoka. You need to allow those characters to breathe, and you need to walk away from the legacy characters.
It's like they tore them down to reboot the series without any regard for...
Yes, they tore them down to reboot the series. Exactly what I just said. Thank you. You do understand. You just don't want to understand.
Like I said, Disney is a business. We get it. But here's the issue. Star Wars became legendary because it wasn't treated like a product assembly line.
Star Wars was successful because it wasn't treated like a product assembly line. Are you at all familiar with the decision that George Lucas made to give up points on his Star Wars profits to own the product licensing rights? Star Wars has always been about merchandising, about selling stuff. I hate to break it to you, but Star Wars has been and always will be about profit. The story is great. We love the characters. That's very important, and it's important to us. However, at the end of the day, Star Wars is about selling product. Always will be.
It's clear that in the beginning they were prioritizing quantity over quality, and it was the bombing of Solo, which was in reaction to The Last Jedi being absolutely horrible.
That is another myth perpetrated by the fandom menace and people who are trying to defeat and deflate Disney era Star Wars. The reason Solo failed was poor marketing and its release time during Deadpool and the Avengers.
They just need to hire talented people who actually understand Star Wars and care about it. Not people who ridicule and shit on George Lucas like Leslie Headland, who essentially blew $300 million on the Acolyte for some sort of a weird therapy session for herself.
A disgusting comment. Yes, the Acolyte was bumpy. I did not love the way it was executed, but you cannot say that Leslie Headland didn't know more about Star Wars than any other creator outside of Dave Filoni. She understood the Star Wars history and the Star Wars lore better than anybody else. The execution was a problem. We can all agree to that. But the story itself tells me that Leslie Headland was the absolute right choice for this. And to call it a personal therapy session is just it's gross.
Rey's journey feels almost like a checklist. Find her powers, win some fights, face a villain, and move on.
Sounds like Luke Skywalker. Find your powers, win some fights, blow up the Death Star, fight Darth Vader, survive, fight Darth Vader again, move on.
There's no real inner struggle or development whatsoever. Ask yourself, what did she do to really train and develop her powers, her immense powers?
The Phantom Menace is so hung up on Rey's training, when meanwhile, all we ever saw from Luke was a 3-day weekend in Dagobah doing backflips with a creature on his back. It's a really weak argument, and it's clearly based in not liking Rey as a character for whatever reason that may be. I think we know what it is.
It's almost as if Disney didn't want to take the risk of letting their protagonist struggle, because struggles don't sell action figures.
Wait a second. You can't on one hand say that the new action figures aren't selling and try to link it to having struggles after you just said that Luke Skywalker went through immense struggles, and we have seen the sales of classic Star Wars stuff flying off the shelves for 40 years now. So that is a ridiculous argument.
What else can you expect when you don't have directors talking to each other properly, planning out the trilogy, or really understanding Star Wars?
Can we talk for a minute about George Lucas not having a plan for the original trilogy? We'd rather not talk about that, right? Okay.
Disney's new material often feels like it's cherry-picking the expanded universe for fan service.
Okay, let's talk about this comment, because this is one of the biggest problems I have with all the YouTube haters. You talk about how they have ignored this source material, the old comics, the old books, the old video games, and then when they draw from it to make the legends come to life to fit into a new universe that everybody can enjoy, you call it cherry picking, you call it lazy, you call it all kinds of negative things. But the reality is they're giving you what you want. I mean, look, you had Darth Plagueis in The Acolyte, literally on screen, something you've all been crying for years. And yet it became something that you decided to pick on and not accept and explore. And again, I can agree that The Acolyte was not well put together, but the story is there. It's the same thing if you look at the books and the comics. A lot of them were not well put together. All apologies to the authors, but they were cobbled together. If you want to complain that they're not using the content that you love from a child, and I get it, but when they do use it, you use it against Disney to build your case against Disney. That's unacceptable. That's not being really true to what you're trying to say.
And frankly, I don't think they even really know Star Wars all that well.
Again, the most gatekeepery shit coming out of his mouth. I don't think they understand Star Wars well.
Unless you get...
That was probably the most Star Wars moment you could have had in the Kenobi series. Just Star Wars is full of fun and goofiness. And if you watch the first 6 movies and you don't see that, and you don't see how Leia sneaking in under Obi-Wan Kenobi's coat as something very Star Wars, then you're lying to yourself and you're looking for problems.
Under George Lucas, Star Wars had a clear vision, even if it was controversial. Disney's lack of a cohesive vision is painfully obvious.
Clear vision, again, episodes 4, 5, 6. Luke kissing his sister. Was that part of the vision? Vader being Luke's father. Was that part of the clear vision? The word Darth being a title versus someone's first name. Was that part of the clear vision?
Disney can restore the soul of Star Wars. I truly believe this, but only if they stop focusing on shallow, marketable content, agendas, checkboxes, and political divisiveness.
Agendas, checkboxes, and political divisiveness. This is where your focus has been on multiple things that come through. Instead, let the story do the talking. I just did a video, and I agree. We shouldn't see marketing leading with political perspectives or diversity as the key. The stories tell the story. If you watch these stories and allow yourself to look past your own particular perspectives on politics and people and enjoy the stories, you're going to see that something like The Acolyte, while clumsily put together, is actually a brilliant Star Wars story.
If Disney truly wants Star Wars to endure, they need to honor the galaxy's heart. And that starts with putting storytelling over sales, just like George did.
Storytelling over sales. Yes, I agree. George Lucas put storytelling over sales once he started to make money. He wanted to tell his stories, but he also wanted to merchandise them. Ask the average Star Wars fan, not you, not me, the average Star Wars fan. When they think of Star Wars, what do they think of? They probably think of the original trilogy, and they also think of Star Wars toys. Star Wars toys have changed the way things are marketed. So, yes, it makes sense that you want to consider what is marketable and what is not.
I love Star Wars with all my heart, and I don't want to see Disney destroy it any further by making poor decisions and hiring the wrong people.
Leslie Headland, again, go check it out. Understand the story she told. She knows Star Wars better than most people, maybe better than you.
Lucasfilm used to mean something. It used to be an independent company, and now it's some massive corporate monster.
Lucasfilm is still the same company. It just happens to be owned by Disney. And yes, they do have an obligation to make profit. This is the way things work. This is why, like, for example, if I had a lightsaber company, I would put ads to it all around everything that I was doing online so that I could sell more lightsabers. Does that make sense?
Run by people who don't even understand its origins or foundations.
This kind of comment is a regular comment from the Star Wars grifters, the Star Wars YouTubers, saying that Disney storytellers don't understand Star Wars, and that is such an uneducated comment. It is such a perspective that is gatekeeping, and it is just that they don't look at Star Wars the way you do. They look at Star Wars as a growing, living thing, whereas you're still looking at Star Wars as it existed from 1977 to about 2003. And everything in between is where you live. Anything after is the growth, the extension, the expansion of that Star Wars universe. And it should be welcomed. It should be embraced. And it's not going to be perfect because there is a lot of content. And that's just it. I agree. Some of the content is coming out too quickly. Some of it is not as well put together. But as the story grows and continues to expand, and as that universe continues to expand, we will continue to get more of it. And if you don't like it, that is fine. You can absolutely watch episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 and read your comic books from the 80s and 90s and read your novels from the 80s and 90s and play the video games from the 80s and 90s. But Star Wars is growing, and this is a good thing. And if you don't see that, it's because you're a little bit closed-minded and you're not willing to accept that the story will change and that you're not 10 years old anymore. You're not 20 years old anymore. Things have changed, the story has changed, and the world has changed. And good fiction reflects a changing world.
I believe Star Wars can be more profitable than Marvel, DC, and every other franchise combined. You just have to tell the story.
And who do you recommend? Oh, great storyteller. I've watched your stuff. It's not great stories. It is reflecting and holding on to an old way of what you believe Star Wars was from when you were playing with your action figures and shooting your home videos with a lightsaber. There's no depth to those stories whatsoever. They take on and illustrate and present what was cool about Star Wars as kids, and that's great. But it's not the storytelling that you're alluding to here.
Let me know what you guys think.
You know what I think. I just told you. It's frustrating, right? This kind of conversation continues to happen. And honestly, there's two things going on here. And I'm going to be totally frank. Number one, he created this video with the title of Star Wars, How Disney Destroyed Star Wars. Send this to a Disney Star Wars fan because he wants to drive traffic to his YouTube channel. I am making this video because some of the most watched videos on my channel are when I talk about some of the crazy things that Star Wars Theory says. This is the way it works. And to pretend you don't understand that, to pretend that you don't understand the way content drives viewership, the way divisiveness drives viewership, and in your case, it's to sell more Star Wars Theory Sabers. Oh, well, also to drive views, which drives up your YouTube revenue, to drive people to your live chats where people will give you super chats. But you don't seem to be genuine in your concept that content, films, movies, stories, YouTube videos are there to make money. If you like to talk about Star Wars from a positive perspective, if you don't mind having conversations about where Star Wars can improve, but doing it in a way that's not gatekeeping, please subscribe to this channel. Join us live on Thursday nights when we do our ATG live show where we have guests, we go over the Star Wars news, and we share news and conversation and take your comments into the chat. You don't have to pay super chats for them, by the way. You can just be part of the show. So join us live on Thursdays, hit subscribe, and may the Force be with you.